Have you ever woken up one morning and realized your whole life was built on a lie? Because that's exactly what happened to me the day I heard his voice again, 5 years after he was declared dead. My name is Rachel Morgan. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and for the last half-decade, I've been known as the woman whose husband disappeared without a trace. Everyone pitied me. The police said he probably drowned during a fishing trip on the Columbia River. His body was never found, but they said the current was strong enough to carry anyone away. For years, I forced myself to believe that story. I had to. Otherwise, I'd go insane. My husband, Ethan, was my everything. He was kind, spontaneous, the kind of man who left love notes in my lunch bag and played guitar on rainy nights. When he vanished, the world turned silent. The sound of rain used to soothe me. After that day, it only made my stomach twist. I tried to rebuild. I got a small job at a local bakery. I went to therapy. I even learned to drive again because I couldn't stand taking the same bus route we used to share. But the grief never left. It only got quieter, like a shadow that followed me everywhere. Then, 5 years later, something impossible happened. It was a Thursday evening in late September. The air smelled like wet asphalt after a storm, and the bakery had just closed. I was sweeping the floor when my phone buzzed, a notification from a number I didn't recognize. It was an audio file. No message, no name, just a file titled, "For Rachel." My heart started pounding so loud I could barely breathe. I hesitated, my finger trembling above the play button. For a second, I thought it was some cruel prank. Portland's local paper had done a 5 years later piece about Ethan's disappearance just last week. Maybe someone thought it was funny to send me something like this. But curiosity and something deeper, something primal, took over. I pressed play. At first, it was just static. Then a voice. "Rach? If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it out." I froze. My knees buckled. The broom clattered to the floor. I knew that voice. It was Ethan's. The room started spinning. My throat closed. Tears blurred my vision. It wasn't possible. He'd been gone for 5 years. The FBI had closed his case. His insurance was settled. His memorial service had been held. But there he was, his voice shaking, raw, real. "I can't explain everything right now. They're watching me. But please don't trust anyone. Especially not." The recording cut off. Just silence. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. My reflection in the bakery window looked like a stranger, eyes wide, mouth open, breathing in short bursts. I replayed it again and again, trying to find clues in the background. There was a faint sound of wind, maybe waves? Or a car engine? A door slamming? It wasn't clear. But there was one thing I was sure of. Ethan was alive. For the first time in 5 years, the grief turned into something else. Not peace. Not closure. Fear. Because if Ethan was alive, then who wanted me to believe he was dead? And why, after all this time, was I only hearing from him now? I stared at the phone, my heart hammering as the last words of his voice echoed in my head. Don't trust anyone. Even as the wind rattled the bakery windows, one thought consumed me completely. Someone knew. Someone had lied. And if Ethan was still out there, I had to find him. But deep down, a colder truth crept in, a truth that made my skin crawl. Maybe he didn't want to be found. When Rachel Morgan first met Ethan, she was 23 and working the closing shift at a coffee shop near the University of Oregon. He had walked in late one night, drenched from the rain, with that crooked smile that instantly disarmed her. He ordered black coffee, left a $20 bill on the counter, and said, "Keep the change. You look like you've had a long night." She laughed, but that moment carved itself into her memory, the warmth in his voice, the confidence in his eyes. He felt safe. The kind of man who could hold your chaos without flinching. Back then, Rachel didn't know what safe really meant. Her childhood had been a tangle of shouting, slammed doors, and broken glass. Her father, a Vietnam vet who never recovered from the war, used to disappear for days and return drunk and violent. Her mother survived by pretending everything was normal. Rachel survived by learning to be small, to move quietly, to never ask for too much. When Ethan entered her life, He was the first person who ever made her feel seen. They married 3 years later in a small ceremony near Cannon Beach. Rachel wore a cream-colored dress her mother helped her sew. The ocean wind whipped through her hair, and Ethan whispered, "We'll never lose each other, okay? No matter what happens." She believed him. The first 2 years were beautiful, quiet dinners, hikes through Forest Park, long drives with no destination. But then Ethan started changing. The late-night phone calls began. The unmarked envelopes slipped under their door. And sometimes, when Rachel asked who was calling, he'd just smile faintly and say, "You don't need to worry about that." At first, she thought it was work stress. Ethan worked as a systems engineer for a private security firm. He said most of what he did was confidential. Rachel respected that. Until the night he came home with blood on his shirt and a look in his eyes she didn't recognize. "Ethan, what happened?" she asked, panic rising. He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You have to trust me. Please. Just trust me." She nodded, but inside, something cracked. Over the next few months, he became distant, checking the windows, deleting messages, sleeping with his phone under the pillow. Then came the night he disappeared. A storm had rolled in from the coast, thunder shaking the windows. Ethan told her he needed to drive out to meet a client. He kissed her on the forehead, grabbed his jacket, and said, "Lock the doors, Ratch. Don't open them for anyone." That was the last time she saw him. When his car was found abandoned near the Columbia River, police said it looked like he'd stopped to watch the storm. The passenger door was open, his wallet inside. They searched for days. Nothing. No body, no signs of struggle. Just gone. Rachel stopped eating. Stopped sleeping. The smell of rain made her sick. At night, she'd wake up thinking she heard footsteps in the hall. Sometimes she'd whisper his name into the darkness, hoping somehow that he'd whisper back. Her therapist once asked her, "What's worse, Rachel, losing him or not knowing?" She'd answered without thinking, "Not knowing. Always not knowing." Because not knowing meant hope. And hope was a cruel thing. It kept her alive just enough to keep her suffering. Years passed. Everyone told her to move on. Her mother said, "Honey, he's gone. You have to let him rest." Her best friend, Dana, gently suggested she start dating again. "You deserve happiness," she'd said, squeezing Rachel's hand. Rachel tried. She smiled at parties, she posted pictures of sunsets, she went through the motions of living. But inside, she carried a hollow weight, a quiet voice that whispered, "Something isn't right." When that voice memo arrived 5 years later, it didn't just reopen the wound. It tore it wide open. Because suddenly, all those sleepless nights, all the strange details the police had ignored, they weren't just paranoia. They were signs. Signs that Ethan hadn't died. And as Rachel sat in her dark kitchen that night, replaying the message again and again, her heart broke in a new way. Not the grief of losing him, the grief of realizing he might have chosen to leave. The clock ticked past midnight. The air felt heavy, thick with questions she wasn't ready to face. And she whispered, almost to herself, "If he's alive, then what does that make me?" For the first time in years, Rachel felt something colder than pain. Doubt. And she thought, maybe the truth is worse than his death. For the next 3 days, Rachel barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Ethan's voice again, "Don't trust anyone." Those 3 words replayed in her mind like a haunting lullaby. She couldn't bring herself to tell anyone. Not her mother, not Dana, not even the police. Who would believe her? A 5-year-old case, an anonymous message, and a voice that could easily have been faked. But Rachel knew her husband's voice. She knew the way he lingered on the R in Ratch, the way his tone softened just before he asked for something important. It was him. There was no doubt in her mind. So, she started digging. She stayed up late in her apartment, surrounded by old police reports and Ethan's notebooks. The air smelled like stale coffee and rain seeping through the cracked window. Every sound made her jump, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the wooden floorboards. She opened his old laptop, still in the box the police had returned years ago. Most files were empty or corrupted, but one folder caught her eye. It was buried under layers of directories labeled work_backups_2017. Inside were encrypted documents, gibberish symbols, except for one plain text file. It read only, "If anything happens, start with Monroe." Rachel frowned. Monroe wasn't a name she recognized. A person? A place? She typed Monroe, Oregon into Google. There it was, a small town 2 hours south of Portland, population barely 700. Her pulse quickened. Something told her this wasn't random. The next morning, she called in sick and drove down I-5 in the rain. Her wipers beat rhythmically against the windshield, each swipe clearing just enough to see the endless stretch of gray highway ahead. The radio was off. She didn't want noise. Just her thoughts, which were loud enough. As she entered Monroe, everything felt off. Too quiet. Too still. Rows of weathered houses, an empty gas station, a diner with a flickering open sign. She parked outside the diner, ordered black coffee, and tried to steady her breathing. Passing through, the waitress asked, pouring her a refill. "Yeah," Rachel said, forcing a smile. "Looking for someone. Maybe you've heard of him, Ethan Morgan." The waitress paused. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, before she shook her head. "Can't say I have, honey." But Rachel noticed her hand tremble slightly as she set the mug down. Something wasn't right. Outside, she saw a man sitting alone in a pickup truck across the street, engine running. He wasn't eating, wasn't on his phone. Just watching. Rachel's stomach twisted. Paranoia, she told herself. You've been living in fear too long. But when she stepped out of the diner, the truck's headlights flashed once. Then it pulled away. She froze, watching the taillights disappear down the road. That night, she checked into a cheap roadside motel. The air smelled like bleach and old cigarettes. She sat on the bed, scrolling through her phone, trying to make sense of everything. That's when an email arrived. No sender name. No subject. Just one line in the body. "Stop digging. You won't find him." Rachel's hands went cold. She stared at the screen, heart hammering, as the cursor blinked at the end of the sentence. Then another email came through seconds later, same address. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Her breath caught. A chill ran down her spine. She stood up, looked out the window, and saw the same pickup truck parked across the street. Lights off. Engine silent. Rachel's pulse raced. She backed away from the window, heart slamming against her ribs. Every instinct screamed run. But where? To who? Her phone buzzed again, this time a voicemail. She pressed play with trembling hands. Static. Then, Ethan's voice. "Rach, please. They're everywhere. I didn't die, but I wish I had. Stop looking for me." Her breath hitched. Tears welled up instantly. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" she whispered to no one. Then the message ended with a sound that made her blood run cold, a loud bang, followed by footsteps and someone yelling in the background. Rachel dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, the screen cracked. Her reflection in the mirror looked like a ghost, pale, wide-eyed, trembling. And that's when she realized this wasn't about grief anymore. It was about survival. Because if Ethan was alive, and if someone wanted her to stop looking, then the people who took him were still out there. And now they knew she was looking too. She sank to the floor, shaking uncontrollably, whispering to herself, "What have I done?" And it was in that moment, beneath the hum of the motel's flickering neon sign, that Rachel Morgan's search for truth became a fight for her life. And that was the night everything changed. Rachel barely slept that night. Every sound made her flinch, the humming of the vending machine outside, the occasional car passing by, the creak of the motel floorboards. She sat on the edge of the bed, clutching her cracked phone, replaying the voicemail again and again. Ethan's words looped in her mind like a curse. "I didn't die, but I wish I had." By dawn, her fear had hardened into something else. Resolve. She grabbed her keys, threw on her raincoat, and left the motel before sunrise. The parking lot was damp with mist, the air heavy with the smell of gasoline and wet asphalt. She drove until the motel vanished behind her and the gray sky opened over empty farmland. For 5 years, she had lived in denial, waiting for closure that never came. But now she understood something cruel. No one was ever going to hand her the truth. If Ethan was alive, if he'd been hiding from someone, she needed to find out why, even if it broke her. She pulled over at a gas station, bought a burner phone, and called Dana. "Rach? It's 6 in the morning. What's going on?" Rachel hesitated. "I think Ethan's alive." A pause. Then Dana's voice, tight and cautious. "Rachel, we've talked about this. Grief can." "I heard him, Dana." His voice. "He said he didn't die." Another pause. Then, softly, "Honey, people fake voices online all the time. Scammers." This wasn't fake. Rachel's voice cracked. "He mentioned something only he would know." Silence. Then Dana sighed. "Okay, what do you need me to do?" Rachel swallowed. "I need you to check something for me. Ethan's old firm, the security company. They said he was working on government contracts before he vanished. Can you find out who they worked with?" "I'll try," Dana said. "But Rachel, be careful, okay? Just promise me that." Rachel hung up without answering. She drove south again, following a hunch more than logic. Monroe was too small for coincidence. Ethan had left that clue for a reason. Near the edge of town, she found an abandoned building, a warehouse with a faded sign that read Northwest Logistics. The windows were boarded up, but a single light glowed faintly inside. Her heart pounded as she approached the door. It wasn't locked. She slipped in quietly, her shoes crunching over debris. Inside, the air smelled like rust and mildew. Broken filing cabinets lay scattered across the floor. She pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. Then she saw it, a wall covered in photos, notes, and maps. And in the center of it all, a picture of her. Rachel's breath caught. The photo was recent. It showed her leaving the bakery 2 weeks ago, holding her phone. Her phone slipped from her hand, hitting the concrete with a dull thud. Footsteps echoed from the far side of the warehouse. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. No answer. Just the slow, deliberate sound of boots on the floor. She backed toward the exit, every muscle in her body screaming to run. Then a man stepped into the beam of her flashlight. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket and gloves. His face was shadowed. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice calm but cold. "Who are you?" she demanded. He took a step closer. "You need to stop looking, Rachel. Where's Ethan?" He stared at her for a long moment. Then, quietly, he made his choice. Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Rachel stood frozen, her heart racing so hard it hurt. He made his choice. The words echoed in her chest like a gunshot. She ran out of the warehouse, gasping for air, tears streaming down her face. Her hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, trying to steady herself. For a moment, she thought about giving up, driving home, deleting everything, pretending none of this had happened. But then she saw the photo of herself again in her mind, pinned on that wall like prey. That was the moment something inside her snapped. She wiped her face, stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror, and whispered, "I'm done being afraid." Her voice was low, steady, unfamiliar. Then louder. "I'm going to find you, Ethan. No matter what it takes." She put the car in drive, the engine roaring to life, headlights cutting through the fog. For the first time in years, Rachel Morgan wasn't waiting for answers. She was going to take them. And as she sped down the empty road toward the rising sun, she didn't look back once. That was the moment she decided she would rather die knowing the truth than live believing a lie. The next few days were a blur of exhaustion and adrenaline. Rachel moved like someone who'd already burned through fear and come out the other side raw. Every step she took was shaky but deliberate. She stopped reacting, she started planning. Her first move was to disappear. She ditched her apartment, left her phone behind, and used the burner to make only one call to Dana. "I can't explain everything right now," Rachel said, her voice low. "But if anyone asks, tell them you haven't heard from me." "Rachel, what's happening? You sound..." "Please, Dana. Just promise me." A pause. Then, quietly, I promise. She hung up before the tears could fall. Rachel drove north toward Seattle, blending into the fog and traffic. She stayed in motels off the interstate, paid in cash, kept the curtains closed. At night, she wrote down everything she remembered, the names, the phrases, the faces. On the third night, while eating a stale sandwich from a gas station, she realized something. Every time Ethan had mentioned Monroe before, it had been during arguments about his company. Maybe Monroe wasn't just a location. Maybe it was someone inside the firm, a codename. She opened her laptop and began searching through archived employee directories of Rexford Security Systems, Ethan's old workplace. It was slow, tedious, but after 2 hours, she found it. Monroe, Daniel Monroe, Senior Systems Analyst. Her pulse spiked. She scrolled further. The contact information was redacted, but there was a LinkedIn profile, inactive for 5 years. Still, the last known city, Tacoma, Washington. Rachel leaned back in her chair, her breath shaky but determined. This was something real. A lead. The next morning, she drove to Tacoma. The smell of salt and diesel filled the air as she parked near the waterfront. She found the address, a small, run-down house with overgrown grass and blinds drawn tight. She knocked. No answer. Knocked again, louder this time. Finally, the door cracked open. A man's voice rasped, "Who's asking?" "My name's Rachel Morgan," she said. "I knew Ethan." The door opened wider. A man in his late 40s stood there, gray streaks in his beard, eyes sunken with fatigue. "Ethan Morgan?" His tone sharpened. "What about him?" "He's alive," Rachel said softly. "I got a recording." He mentioned people watching him. "I think you know something." Monroe's expression flickered, fear, recognition, guilt, all in 1 second. Then he shook his head. "You need to go." "Please," Rachel said. "He trusted you." "He left your name." That stopped him. He glanced over his shoulder, then stepped aside. 5 minutes, he said. No more. Inside, the house smelled like dust and old paper. Computer parts littered the dining table, wires snaking across the floor. Monroe sat down, rubbing his temples. "I told him this would happen," he muttered. "They don't let people walk away." "Who are they?" Rachel asked. He looked up at her. "You really don't know, do you?" She shook her head. Ethan found something he wasn't supposed to. Their system. It wasn't just for surveillance. It was for manipulation. Political contracts. Data fabrication. He tried to expose them, but before he could, he disappeared. I assumed they silenced him. Rachel's heart pounded. But he's alive. Monroe gave a bitter laugh. Then maybe they're using him. He turned to an old hard drive on the table. He gave me this before he vanished. Said if anything ever happened, someone might come looking. Maybe that someone is you. He slid the drive toward her. Rachel stared at it, realizing she was holding the one thing Ethan might have died protecting. "Why give this to me?" she asked. "Because I'm done hiding," Monroe said quietly. "And because he loved you. That's the only reason he'd risk contacting you now." Rachel swallowed hard, gripping the drive. "I need to find him." Monroe's eyes softened. "Then start with what's on there." But once you open it, he hesitated. "There's no going back." She nodded. "I already went too far to stop." Driving back to the motel, the city lights blurred through her windshield. For the first time in years, Rachel felt something unfamiliar, not peace, not safety, but control. She plugged in the hard drive that night. The screen flickered, revealing a folder titled Mirror Protocol. Her breath caught. Inside were hundreds of files, logs, recordings, and names. Dozens of names. People she didn't know. Some were politicians, some corporate executives. And one file was labeled e.morgan_final.txt. Her hands trembled as she opened it. "If you're reading this, it means they failed to stop you. I'm sorry, Rachel. I did everything to protect you. But the truth isn't what you think." She stared at the words, a chill crawling up her spine. For the first time, she wasn't just chasing Ethan. She was chasing the people who destroyed both of their lives. And as she closed the laptop, tears burning her eyes, Rachel whispered into the quiet room. "I'm not afraid of the truth anymore." Outside, dawn was breaking, pale light spilling across the motel curtains. She was beginning to breathe differently. Weeks passed. The woman who once trembled at the sound of rain was gone. In her place was someone colder, sharper, deliberate. Rachel Morgan had become her own investigation. Days turned into nights as she pored through Ethan's encrypted files in small motels along the Pacific Northwest. She learned how to crack passwords, trace IP addresses, and follow the faint digital footprints of a man who'd tried to disappear. Every file she opened revealed more of the same shadowy network, contracts with fake companies, covert surveillance projects, and names of high-profile clients who paid to rewrite reality. Mirror Protocol, Ethan had called it, a system designed to erase and replace digital identities. He hadn't drowned. He had been erased. And somehow she knew the people behind it had used Ethan's disappearance as a test. 3 months later, Rachel looked different. Her brown hair was shorter now, cropped at her shoulders. The dark circles under her eyes remained, but there was a new steadiness in them, the look of someone who had stopped asking why and started asking how. She worked under aliases, using VPNs and burner accounts. She spent nights in libraries, tracing company mergers, contracts, and offshore accounts tied to Rexford Security. The deeper she dug, the clearer it became. This was never just about Ethan. It was about what he'd uncovered and who he'd tried to protect. One rainy evening in Seattle, she visited Monroe again. He opened the door slowly, as if expecting bad news. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered. "I found something," Rachel said, her voice firm. "A name that keeps showing up, Helios Division. Do you know it?" Monroe hesitated. Then he nodded slowly. Helios was the branch that funded Rexford's private operations. They were the money behind everything. And if Ethan got close to exposing them, they made him disappear, Rachel finished. Monroe sighed. He thought he could take them down from the inside. But once you're in, you're never really out. Rachel stared at him. "Then I'll do what he couldn't." He looked at her, almost pitying. "You're not him, Rachel." She smiled faintly. "No, I'm worse. I've got nothing left to lose." From that day on, Rachel's transformation accelerated. She took small victories where she could, tracing one Helios shell company back to a Seattle law firm, then uncovering fake employee records tied to an offshore account. Each step was like pulling a thread, and the more she pulled, the closer the whole fabric came to unraveling. But with progress came danger. She noticed unfamiliar cars parked near her motels. Random phone calls with silence on the other end. Emails that vanished seconds after opening. Still, she didn't stop. She couldn't. There were nights when she'd sit on a motel balcony, sipping burnt coffee, the air thick with salt and rain, and whisper, "You taught me how to fight, Ethan. I hope you're watching." It wasn't revenge that kept her going anymore. It was clarity. She had lived 5 years as a ghost of a woman waiting to be saved. Now she understood she was never meant to be saved. She was meant to rise. 6 months after finding the recording, Rachel walked into a tech conference in downtown Seattle under a new name, Erin Michaels, freelance data consultant. Hidden beneath her sleeve was a small drive loaded with evidence, files from Mirror Protocol that tied Helios Division to corporate espionage and data tampering. It was risky, but she needed confirmation from someone credible. She found it in Aaron Blake, a cybersecurity journalist known for taking down massive tech frauds. When she showed him the drive, his face went pale. "Where did you get this?" he whispered. "From someone who died trying to tell the truth," Rachel said. Aaron looked at her, realization dawning. "You're Ethan Morgan's wife." Her heart clenched. "I was." He hesitated, then said, "If this is real, you're in danger." "I already am," she said simply. "Just help me finish what he started." Over the following weeks, Aaron helped her cross-check the data, verifying names and transactions. Together, they built a map of the operation, the servers, the accounts, the people responsible. Rachel barely recognized herself anymore. She smiled sometimes, not because she was happy, but because she finally understood her purpose. When Aaron asked her one night, "Why keep going?" she answered quietly, "Because for the first time, I'm not chasing Ethan. I'm chasing the truth. He nodded slowly. And when you find it? She looked out the window at the city lights reflecting on the rain-soaked glass. Then I'll finally know who I am without him. By the time spring arrived, Rachel's fear had transformed into something powerful. She stood taller, spoke with confidence. Even Monroe noticed when she visited again. You've changed, he said. I had to, she replied. He's not coming back, Monroe. But his story will. She walked away with her head high, the drive clutched tight in her hand. For the first time since Ethan vanished, Rachel Morgan wasn't haunted by the past. She was building something new from the wreckage, from the pain, from herself. She finally understood that she was worth saving even if no one came to save her. Rachel hadn't seen the man from the warehouse since that night in Monroe. But she never forgot his voice. Cold. Controlled. The kind of tone that made her skin crawl because it carried no emotion at all. She thought she was done with him until he found her again. It was late afternoon in downtown Seattle. Rachel was leaving a cafe after meeting with Aaron to finalize their report when she noticed a reflection in the glass door, a figure standing across the street, watching her. Tall, dark coat, hands in his pockets. Her stomach dropped. When she turned to look, he was gone. She forced herself to breathe, kept walking, scanning every car window, every corner. The city buzzed with life, but it suddenly felt hostile, suffocating. By the time she reached her car, her hands were trembling. She sat behind the wheel for a full minute before starting the engine. As she pulled onto the road, a black SUV slipped into her rearview mirror. It stayed behind her for 10 blocks, then 20. When she turned onto the freeway, it followed. Her pulse spiked. She took the next exit, then another. The SUV matched every move. Finally, she slammed her foot on the gas, weaving through traffic until she reached an industrial park. She pulled over, heart pounding, and watched the SUV roll to a stop behind her. The driver's door opened. The man from Monroe stepped out. Rachel's breath caught. He walked toward her car slowly, deliberately. She locked the doors, grabbed her pepper spray, but he stopped a few feet away, palms up. I'm not here to hurt you, he said. You already tried, she snapped. He shook his head. No. I tried to warn you. About what? He took a deep breath. Ethan isn't who you think he is. The words hit her like a slap. What are you talking about? He wasn't trying to expose Helios. He built it. Rachel's throat tightened. You're lying. Am I? The man said quietly. Why do you think they let him live? Because he was useful. He designed the system to erase people. And when he got scared, he ran. They wanted him dead. I was supposed to clean up his mess. But he begged me not to hurt you. She shook her head violently. No, Ethan would never. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a USB drive, placing it on the hood of her car. Everything you need to see is on there, he said. I didn't come to stop you. I came to give you the truth. Rachel stared at him, her heart pounding so loud it drowned out the city noise. Why help me? She asked. Because you're the only one left who doesn't have blood on their hands, he said. And because I'm tired of cleaning up their lies. Before she could speak again, he turned and walked back to the SUV. Within seconds, he was gone. Rachel sat there frozen, the USB glinting in the fading light. Hours later, she and Aaron sat in his apartment, the only sound the whir of his laptop as he decrypted the files. The tension in the room was suffocating. When the documents finally loaded, Aaron's eyes went wide. Oh my God. What? Rachel asked. He turned the screen toward her. There it was, Ethan's signature on the original Mirror Protocol patent filings. Technical schematics. Project memos. His name listed not as a whistleblower, but as chief architect. Rachel stared at the screen in disbelief. Her stomach churned. Every memory of him, the late-night calls, the secrecy, the guilt in his eyes suddenly made sense. He lied to me, she whispered. Aaron looked at her cautiously. Maybe he tried to fix what he created. Rachel shook her head. He didn't just lie. He made me live in his shadow, grieve him like a victim while he hid like a coward. Tears filled her eyes, but they weren't soft this time. They burned. She stood, pacing the room, her voice trembling. He said, "Don't trust anyone." He meant don't trust me. Erin rose slowly. "Rachel, we can still expose this. We can make it mean something." She wiped her face and looked at him, calm, cold, resolute. "No, I'll finish it. But not for him. For me." The next morning, Rachel walked to the pier alone, USB in her pocket, the Seattle fog curling around her like smoke. The air smelled of salt and metal. She looked out over the water, the same gray expanse where she once thought Ethan had died. "I buried you once," she whispered. "This time, I'm burying the lie." She tossed the USB into the water, watching it vanish beneath the surface. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "It's over. Be free." No signature. But she knew the voice behind it. Ethan. For the first time in years, Rachel didn't cry. She smiled faintly, the wind tangling her hair. "Goodbye, Ethan." She turned and walked away, leaving the water, the lies, and the ghosts behind. She no longer needed revenge. She had dignity, and that was enough. You'd think learning that the man you loved helped create the monster that ruined your life would destroy you. For a while, it did. There were nights when I sat in the dark of my motel room, listening to the rain hammer against the window, wondering if I'd ever stop being angry. Angry at Ethan, at the people who used him, at myself for believing that love could fix broken things. But then one morning, something changed. I woke up before sunrise. The air was still, the city outside quiet. I made coffee, opened the curtains, and watched the sky turn pink over the harbor. For the first time in years, I didn't feel panic crawling under my skin. Just stillness. It wasn't peace exactly, not yet. But it was the beginning of it. I realized something then. Closure doesn't come when the truth arrives. It comes when the truth stops hurting. I kept helping Erin finish the report, not because I wanted revenge, but because it mattered. The world deserved to know what Mirror Protocol had done, how it had rewritten people's lives, erased identities, fabricated narratives. Ethan's legacy was a scar, but if exposing it meant preventing others from being erased, then maybe that was enough redemption for both of us. I stopped hiding behind aliases. I started using my real name again, Rachel Morgan. I filed a statement with federal investigators, handed over the data we'd verified, and walked out of that building lighter than I'd felt in years. That night, Erin and I sat on the roof of his apartment, watching the city lights flicker through the fog. "You know," he said, "you could disappear if you wanted. New name, new life. You've got enough money saved." I smiled. "I spent 5 years invisible. I think I've had enough disappearing." He laughed softly. "So what now?" I looked at the skyline, the needle of the Space Needle glowing faintly through the mist, and said, "Now I start living again. For real this time." A few weeks later, I visited the coast where Ethan and I had gotten married. Cannon Beach was colder than I remembered. The ocean wind bit at my skin, but I didn't mind. I walked barefoot along the wet sand, my footprints fading behind me, and talked to him out loud, even though I knew he'd never hear me. "Do you remember what you said that day?" I whispered. "That we'd never lose each other?" I smiled sadly. Turns out, we both got lost. For a long time, I just stood there, watching the waves crash and break, the endless rhythm of something bigger than both of us. I used to think that grief was a cage, something that trapped you inside memories. But now I understand it's more like an ocean. It comes in waves, and one day you just learn to float. I let the wind carry the last of Ethan's memory out to sea. He wasn't my ghost anymore. Just part of the story that made me who I am. People say trauma changes you, but that's not the full truth. Trauma reveals you. It peels back everything unnecessary until you're left with the raw, unfiltered core of who you really are. And what I found under all that pain wasn't weakness. It was strength I didn't know I had. I learned to fight, to think, to see through lies, but most of all, I learned to forgive. Not him. Not yet. But myself. For believing that love was supposed to be perfect. For being human. For surviving. Now, when it rains, and it always rains here, I don't flinch anymore. I open the window and let the smell of it fill my apartment. It reminds me that even storms end. If you asked me what I learned from all of this, I'd tell you 2 things. First, The truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it burns you down first. And second, freedom isn't about getting answers. It's about choosing what still matters once you have them. I chose me. That's my victory. My peace. And when I look at the woman in the mirror now, her tired eyes, her steady breath, I see someone I finally recognize. Someone I trust. I finally understand that I was never meant to be rescued. I was meant to rise. And that was the greatest lesson Ethan ever left me. It's been 2 years since I found the recording. Sometimes, when I think about how everything unfolded, the secrets, the fear, the loss, it feels like someone else's story. Like a movie I watched too many times and finally learned to stop rewinding. I live in Portland again now. The city feels different, softer somehow. Maybe it's just me. My apartment is small but full of light. The smell of fresh bread from the bakery downstairs wakes me up every morning, and I don't hate it anymore. In fact, I find it comforting. I started working with a nonprofit that helps people rebuild their digital identities after fraud and data theft. I tell them, you're more than what was taken from you, and I mean it. Sometimes I even believe I'm talking to myself. The nightmares still come once in a while, flashes of rain, Ethan's voice, the sound of that gunshot in the voicemail, but they don't paralyze me anymore. I wake up, breathe through it, make coffee, and start my day. Healing isn't a finish line, it's maintenance. A lot changed in those 2 years. Aaron published the expose that brought down what was left of Helios Division. It took months of redacted statements and anonymous testimonies, but when it finally hit the press, it made waves across the country. He called the article, "The Mirror We Broke." The FBI reopened several cold cases linked to digital erasures. A few executives vanished before indictments could reach them. The world moved on as it always does, but for a brief moment, people cared. As for Monroe, he disappeared shortly after the investigation went public. I like to think he made peace with his part in all of it, maybe started a new life somewhere. A quiet one. And Ethan. Well, Ethan was never found. No arrest, no official confirmation, nothing. His name came up in a few documents, but always redacted, always erased. It's as if the man himself had become part of the system he built, a ghost in the machine. Sometimes I wonder if he's still out there, watching. Maybe he reads the news, sees my name in small print next to Aaron's article, and feels something. Guilt. Pride. Regret. Maybe nothing at all. But it doesn't matter anymore. Because I finally stopped needing to know. One evening last fall, I stood by the Columbia River, the same place where Ethan's car had been found years ago. The sky was streaked with gold and gray, the air cold enough to make my breath visible. I dropped a single white lily into the water. Not as a memorial, as a release. "I forgive you," I whispered. The current carried it away. And with it, the last trace of the woman who waited. When people hear my story now, they always ask the same question. If you could go back, would you still open that recording? For a long time, I didn't know how to answer. But I do now. Yes, I would. Because even though it shattered me, it also set me free. It forced me to confront the parts of myself that lived in fear, the version of me that waited for closure, for someone to come back, for life to feel safe again. Now, I understand something simple but profound. Peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the choice to live despite it. Sometimes, when the city is quiet and the rain starts to fall, I still talk to Ethan. I tell him about the bakery downstairs, about the people I help, about how I've learned to laugh again. Not because I miss him, but because acknowledging the past keeps me honest about who I've become. There's a small picture of us on my shelf, our wedding day, both of us barefoot on the sand, laughing like the world would never touch us. I don't hide it away. It reminds me that love can be real, even if it doesn't last forever. Because love isn't the promise of never being hurt. It's the courage to love again anyway. And I do love again, not someone new, not yet. But life. The messy, unpredictable, terrifying beauty of it. If there's one thing I've learned after everything, it's this. The truth doesn't end you. It rebuilds you. But only if you let it. That's why I tell my story. Not as a tragedy, but as proof that we survive things we once thought would kill us. And if someone out there is listening, maybe someone who's still searching, still hurting, still replaying their own version of the recording, I hope they hear this part clearly. You don't need to find the person who broke you to start healing. You only need to find yourself again. That's what I did. And that's how I finally came home. If you've stayed with me until now, thank you. Thank you for listening to a story that was never really about mystery or betrayal. It was about what happens after you lose everything and how you build again from the pieces that remain. I spent years living in silence, afraid of my own memories. I thought healing would come the day someone told me the truth about Ethan, or the day justice was finally served. But healing came quietly, the morning I looked at my reflection and didn't see a victim anymore. That's why I wanted to share this. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's real. Because somewhere out there, maybe you're sitting in the dark replaying your own version of a lost voice, thinking you'll never move on. I promise you will. If this story taught me anything, it's that pain doesn't vanish, it transforms. It turns into boundaries, wisdom, empathy. It teaches you to listen deeper, to love more honestly. I don't hate Ethan anymore. I don't glorify him either. I simply understand that we were two broken people trying to save each other from wounds we didn't know how to name. Sometimes love isn't meant to last. Sometimes it's meant to wake you up. And waking up hurts. But it's also the beginning of freedom. When I look back now, I don't see a tragedy. I see a woman who refused to stay lost. I started recording these stories, real stories, because I realized we all have our own recording, that one moment that forces us to choose, stay in the lie or face the truth. And facing it, even when it burns, is how we start again. If my story moved you, if it reminded you of something you've survived, then please do one thing for me. Comment below, what was the moment when you chose to stop being afraid? Like and subscribe if you believe stories can heal. Share this video with someone who needs to know that closure is real, even if the person who hurt you never apologizes. Because that's what this channel is about, turning pain into purpose, one story at a time. Before I go, I want to leave you with 3 truths that kept me alive. 1. You don't owe anyone your silence. The truth is never too heavy when it's spoken. 2. You are not defined by what was done to you. You get to decide what happens next. 3. Forgiveness is freedom. Not for them, for you. When the past calls, let it go to voicemail. You already heard what it had to say. Tonight, as I finish telling this story, the rain is falling again outside my window. The same rhythm that once terrified me now feels like a heartbeat, steady, alive, constant. I take a deep breath and whisper into the dark. I made it. And maybe that's all any of us need to say. Because the real ending isn't about who lived, who died, or who vanished. The real ending is about who you become when the storm finally passes. So if you're watching this right now, wherever you are, please know. You can start over. You can heal. And you are never truly alone. Thank you for being here, for listening, for feeling this with me. Until next time. I'm Rachel, and this was the story of how I stopped waiting for closure and started living instead.